Well, today's Sunday, December 29th. It's the last Sunday of the year 2024. Uh, I thought I'd tell a little story. The other day I told one about when I was ringing my bull and I got to throwing rocks and sticks and things at him. So I thought I'd tell this other story. There for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, I'd work a little bit at this sale barn. It was a real big sale barn. But I only did it like in December and January, something like that, until I could find some more roofs to do, because I mostly just shingled houses, and sometimes I'd paint some barns and do different things. But anyway, I'd worked at this sale barn 2 or 3 winters, and I worked there because I could get a lot of hours real fast. They used to try to sell all the cattle at one time. Then it got too big, so they started like at 8 one morning, and no telling, work till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and then be back by 10 or 12 o'clock the next day to get ready and start selling cattle again, till way up in the morning again, and then you were finished, So anyway, this old sale barn was quite the place, and everybody had different jobs, and it was two fellas. One of them ran the outside, the sale barn part, and they pushed the cattle in. But they had some hot shots, But you got to remember, they were doing this for just 15 minutes or for an hour or for 8 hours, And these cattle didn't want to go in there either, You got to remember that place is. The microphone's going, the auctioneers, talking, and people are in there. It's all lit up, and these cattle are in the back, and it's a little darker back there. They don't want to go into that corral, But I don't know why. To be honest about those two guys, might have been two of the toughest people I ever met in my whole entire life. They weren't like matadors, I don't know what you would call them, but you just take somebody that could push cattle into an arena for 24 hours straight, and I'm sure they've done it longer than that, or do it 30 some hours in 2 days. That takes you can't quit. You have to be one of those kind of people that just keep on going. That's all there was to it. And I'll tell you another secret about that place. For me anyway, you better take some Vaseline or something and put a little strip of it up your butt cheeks, because if you didn't, you'd be galled by the time you got home. Because you couldn't stop, working there. You were always moving, because cattle are always moving, and me, I had a really bad job for a long time. And when they sold the cattle in the arena, they let them go out to shoot, and then they were in a holding pen. And that's where I was at. And I had one little spot about 18 inches wide or 2 foot. It wasn't real wide because they didn't want the cattle to get their head in there, and it went back 3 foot or 4, And I could get into that if it got too intense, But I had to hold them until they found out who bought them, and they had to open up 2 different doors to let them do it down 2 different aisles to get them out in the back to put them in the pens they belonged into, So you'd have to wait until they told you. You had to open the gate, poke the cattle out, shut the gate, and get back out of the way, because if you didn't, they were going to turn more cows in on you for the next bunch that sold. That's just going on and on, repetitiously for hours on end, So anyway, the old boy that was kind of the boss of the place, one day, I think I was just in the back, like feeding cattle or maybe cleaning out pens or something. I'll forget what I was actually doing. I think I might have been feeding some cattle, and hay. So I had a little bobcat, and I'd fill the bucket up, and take it and put it in the mangers for these cattle. And he told me to go out and get these cows out the back. Well, I went out there, and these pens out the back were like probably 40 or 50 yards wide and probably 60 to 80 yards long, something like that. They were pretty big pens, and they were all steel. And they had big round steel posts, every so often, every 10, 12 feet or whatever it was, So I go out there to get these cattle, and I go out in the back, and he's waiting on me, and to shut the gate behind me, because he'd open it, and that aisle was open now all the way up to about to where were pushing the cattle in to sell them. So I go out in this pen, and I look, and there's about 30 or 40 of them out there, and they're part Bramer, and they're they're all pretty dark cattle, so they're probably part Angus, so I call them a Brangus. That's probably what they were, and they was like them old head shakers when they seen you, and they kind of remind me of the way they act like them dang African water buffaloes, if you want to know the truth about it. And I figured that old fellow was going to get to see a rodeo, or he's going to have to come out there and help me, one of the two, because they probably chased me completely out of their, the corral or the holding pen, over the fence. And I thought what to do. So I started going up the aisle or out into that pen, but I stayed on the right hand side, and the left hand side of that big long pen was open, And there was a bunch of old dead oak trees in there, not a whole bunch, but scattered. And they'd all died because there'd been so many cattle in there, and they're all going to the bathroom and everything on the ground, and it kills the trees. And it's, Missouri, you don't have to worry about looking for a rock. There's rocks everywhere, So as I'm going towards these cattle, but I'm staying to the right hand side, I start pitching rocks, and throwing limbs. I mean, as soon as I got in there, but I kept moving towards them, to the one side, and sure, and they all piled up on the upper right hand corner or upper left hand corner, and then they start turning, like a tornado or something, round and round, I mean, these cattle would hurt you. And every time I got up there by one of them big metal posts, I'd pick up a good rock and I'd hit one of those, and it would ring like a bell, if you hit one of those big old steel posts, Then I'd sling some more limbs, and just kept on going. And I think I might have even growled at them a little bit like a dog, But let me tell you, when I got about 3/4 of the way down that aisle of that pen, that big pen, those cattle, they didn't want anything to do with me. And I was still throwing rocks and sticks and stuff. They came out of that going around in circles, and I mean down that aisle, or that side of that pen they went, and they run right on into the sale barn. They didn't want any trouble at all, from me. And and I never did ever say anything to them directly, like hey, get out of here, or nothing like that, But when I started back, I looked and I noticed both of those guys was watching me to see whether I could get those cattle out of there. They were going to have to come and help me, But I was happy, and I mean, that I was able to get them out, without no trouble or anything like that, And they never said a word to me. They just went right on and went back to work, But anyway, that was just one little incident, in the life at the sale barn, Yeah, that's a true story. Hope you enjoyed it.